When you're looking up at the sky, you're going to see one of two types of objects out in space. The first of which is things that give off light. So when we're talking about the sun and the stars, those are objects that give off light due to the nuclear reactions that are happening. The other type of object you're going to look at is objects that reflect light, and that's going to be the moon and all of your planets. So none of these objects themselves give off light, but they they will take the light from our sun, and that sunlight will bounce off of the surface and allow us to see them. What I have here on the screen is a background that shows a whole bunch of stars in the sky. And this is something that we could see all the time. The reason we can't see this all the time is because we have a very bright star nearby. And so whenever our side of the Earth is facing the sun, it's going to be far too bright to see all of these other objects that give off light, just because the light is so radiant from the sun. When we get to the night sky, we can see some other stars in the sky, but they're pretty dim. And the reason is not because they're not as strong as our sun. There are many stars that we see in the night sky are actually brighter than our sun. But the problem is that they're all incredibly far away. So if we take a look at this list here, the nearest star to Earth is one that we call Alpha Centauri, and it is over 4 light years away. So that's millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of miles away from us. It would take the light from our sun over 4 years to reach that distant star, and then going beyond that, all these other stars are 5 to 11 to 16 light years away. So they're very far away. So as a result, they're relatively dim in our sky. So when you're looking at objects, the brightest objects in the sky, they actually aren't going to be the stars beyond our own sun. They'll be the objects that are nearby, which include our moon, which is pretty obvious on most nights. And then you can see other planets because they're close enough to us that the reflected light from the sun is still pretty bright. So if you see a really bright object in the night sky that isn't the moon, it's probably a planet. And so what we'll do is we'll take a look at Venus, which is a planet that is nearby to Earth right now. I'm at the site earthsky.org, and it takes a look at the night sky in our part of the world in the northern hemisphere. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Venus in the night sky. It'll be the brightest object in the western sky. And then if you take a look, this gives some options for other things. If you get up really, really early before the sun rises, you may be able to see Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. And we'll talk about this when I go outside and take a look. You have to see Venus pretty early after sunset, because it starts to fall on the horizon as the Earth turns, and you won't see it after a certain period of time. If we go later in the month, towards the end of the month around Memorial Day, you might be able to see Mercury in the night sky, not too far from Venus. Your ability to see a lot of stars in the sky are going to depend on a couple factors. One is how much of the sky is available to you. If you're in a area with a lot of tall buildings, it would be hard for you to see portions of the sky. And the other more significant factor is the amount of light pollution you have. So if you're in a city area with a lot of lights, especially, or even a suburban area with a lot of street lights, you may not be able to see as much in the night sky. You're only going to get night skies, like I'm doing with these Google searches here, in really dark places, so like secluded places out in the country. If you ever go out camping, that's always a good place to see a beautiful night sky. But in places with lots of light pollution, you're not going to get a lot of these stars. But even so, you still will be able to see the nearby objects, which would be the moon and then any planets. And as of right now, Venus is apparent in the night sky early in the evening, regardless of how much light pollution you have. You still should be able to see it even in the brightest places.
So I'm taking this video at about 9:20 in the evening. Sunset didn't happen all that long ago. And in order to find Venus in the night sky, I do have to look in the western sky. Now, if you're not familiar with what the western sky is, there's a couple ways you can tell. The easiest way is to take a look at where the sun rises and sets. So right now I'm facing the eastern sky, so the sun always rises in the east and sets in the west. So it'll be a little bit darker at this time of night in the eastern sky, like it's completely dark blue, almost black to the east. Another way I can tell is if you have a smartphone, you can also use the compass app and find where it is. So I'm having it point north, and so if I turn to my left, it'll be west, and if I turn to my right, it'll be east based on what I have in the compass. But looking at where the sun was is always a good way to go. So it's about 9:20 right now in the evening, and I'm looking at the western sky. I can tell it's western because it is a little bit lighter in the distance. There's a little bit of faint orange and lighter blue, and then as I go up into the sky, it gets darker. But the object you see right there in the western sky is the planet Venus. And the key to this is you do want to look for Venus pretty shortly after sunset. If you wait too long and get later into the night, Venus is going to go below the horizon. And so you want to catch Venus earlier in the evening, right after sunset.
So it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and the moon is visible at this point. It's come up from the below the horizon. It's beyond the third quarter, and so the shadow is a little bit bigger than the lit part.